A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the DGAP morning briefing on geopolitical challenges. My name is Henning Hoff. I'm executive editor of Internationale Politik Quarterly. Russia's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine ended day 596, so we are nearing the 600th day deadline mark. It has been overshadowed, of course, since the weekend by Hamas' barbaric terrorist attack on civilians in southern Israel, which DGAP will address in different contexts, I'm sure. This morning, however, our focus will be once again on Russia's ongoing war and the destruction it continues to bring to Ukraine. The military situation seems to be improving from Kyiv's point of view. No land breakthrough yet, but the Ukrainian forces have managed to push out the Russian fleet of parts of the Black Sea. We will hear more about that in a minute. On Tuesday, Germany announced a new package of military aid worth 1 billion euros, with a focus on air defense, ammunition, and tanks. Taurus cruise missiles were not included. In contrast, there have been various signs late that support for Ukraine is somewhat weakening in certain countries. Law and Justice, or PiS, the governing party in Poland, has made various noises during the election campaign, which will culminate with the Polish election on Sunday, that left one wondering what has happened to the country once the staunchest ally of Ukraine. Hungary's Viktor Orban has been criticizing military aid for Ukraine for some while, and in Slovakia, Robert Fico narrowly won elections on a pro-Russian, anti-Ukrainian platform. He is about to form the next Slovak government. Against this backdrop and events in Washington, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky paid a surprise visit to NATO yesterday, where he was largely reassured. Amid the ongoing chaos caused by the defenestration of Speaker Kevin McCarthy in Washington, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin stressed that the United States would continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes, despite the escalating violence in the Middle East. Quote, "We are here to dig deep to meet Ukraine's most urgent needs, especially for air defense and ammunition," quote, unquote. As far as I could see, there was no meeting with Ursula von der Leyen yesterday, but in her State of the Union address in September, Commission President also stressed that the EU would support Ukraine for as long as it takes. To discuss all this, we have a great panel with us this morning. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the DGAP Petra Gombalova Kyslingerova, the head of Division Ukraine at the European External Action Service in Brussels. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
And once again, we have with us my DGAP colleague, Dr. Andras Ra, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for Order and Governance in Eastern Europe, Russia, and Central Asia. Good morning, Andras.
Good morning.
And we have a third speaker with us who will join us in a minute. It's Dr. Wilfried Jilge, a distinguished historian of Eastern Europe and a leading expert on Ukraine. He's an associate fellow of the Center for Order and Governance in Eastern Europe, Russia, and Central Asia at the German Council for Relations, and he will be with us in a moment. This morning, we will once again rely on our briefing approach, so each panelist will have about 7 minutes for their remarks, and after some discussion on the panel, about 30 minutes in, we will be opening up for your questions and comments. For the Q&A, please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and put your question to the panel. You're also welcome to submit questions and comments via the chat function. And with a word of thanks to Mila Nitsch, who has been instrumental in organizing these morning briefings, and Jan Stöckmann from the Director's Office, who is supporting the series going forward, as well to our colleagues in the events and communication teams. Let's turn to Andras for a military assessment.
And good morning once again to all of you. Thank you for joining us on this rainy Thursday morning for the morning briefing. As usual, I'm going to share the maps produced by the ET for the study of war in order to provide us with kind of a geographical overview about the situation. So right now I am trying to share my screen, and you are supposed to see a screen about the situation around Bakhmut. Is the screen visible? Perfect, thank you. So where we are at the moment, there is heavy fighting going on around Bakhmut. Light blue that indicates the territories that Ukraine managed to regain or liberate from the Russian forces. Ukraine keeps steadily pushing both in the north and the south of Bakhmut. The operational objective here is to gradually start encircling the city, opening the way for possibly regaining Bakhmut. The Ukrainian advance is slow. One may ask the question why Bakhmut is important. militarily, I mean, from a pure military perspective, it's not too important. But Bakhmut has been the longest siege of the war so far. I mean, Russia has spent 10 months and tens of thousands of soldiers and combatants for taking Bakhmut. In other words, Moscow cannot afford politically to lose Bakhmut. And that's the main reason why Ukrainian forces keep pushing at the city, basically to bog down Russian forces in Bakhmut, because Bakhmut is something Russia has to defend. Besides the heavy fighting in Bakhmut, there is also a situation escalating somewhat southwards at Avdiivka. This is a small town north of Donetsk. Avdiivka has been one of the very few places where since last February, Russians were nearly unable to move the front at all. They gained minor territories south and north of Avdiivka, but the town is still in firm Ukrainian hands. In the last few days, Russia started surprisingly well-organized attacks on Avdiivka. Instead of trying to attack frontally, like they have done in Bakhmut for a while, they are trying to encircle the city by taking the small suburbs located north and south of the city. Now I'm trying to zoom in a bit. This kind of dark yellow territories mean the territories recently captured by the Russians. You see, there is kind of a pincer move forming here where I'm pointing with the mouse. Ukraine is resisting hardly, so there is heavy fighting going here. Avdiivka is important for the Russians. Their primary objective is to bog Ukrainian forces down here. So Russia is somewhat mirroring the strategy Ukraine has been following around Bakhmut. Plus, of course, should they be able to take Avdiivka, this would decrease the burden on Donetsk. On the Zaporizhzhia front line, Ukrainian forces are slowly advancing, but this is really, really slow and cumbersome because the Russia reserve deployed here have been able to put up fairly strong defense. So Ukraine is able to advance a few hundred meters per day. Plus, recently, worsening weather has also hampered the Ukrainian operations. As it was mentioned already, and this is more the territory of my colleague Wilfried Jilga, vis-a-vis the Black Sea Fleet, Ukraine achieved substantial successes. Most of the large surface combatants, in other words, big warships of the Russian Navy, have already left Sevastopol towards the safer Novorossiysk, located in the eastern basin of the Black Sea Fleet. This is among the very few cases in military history when a country which possesses practically no navy, like Ukraine, has been able to push the Russian Navy out from its home bases. Two more things, both are about the future and seem to be fairly important. In the last 2 weeks, Russia has started messaging that they may withdraw the ratification from the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Should Russia withdraw the ratification of the CTBT treaty, this would create the legal opportunity for Russia to resume nuclear weapons testing. It's important, even if they withdraw the ratification, it does not automatically mean that they would actually restart testing. So this is more kind of a communication messaging, but still, this is definitely a change compared to the period that has passed since last February. The possibility of withdrawing the CTBT ratification was voiced by Vladimir Putin himself. Good news, Russians are apparently following the very classic step-by-step escalation ladder. So this is a first step on an upwards ladder, which has several more steps to go, but still, this is something we need to watch very carefully. And the last thing, Russia has been clearly preparing for resuming strikes against Ukraine's energy infrastructure once the autumn colds and autumn winters arrive. How do we know that? Not only from the Ukrainians, but also if one analyzes the Russian strikes against Ukraine in the last few weeks. The spectacular pattern that Russia used practically no cruise missiles. There were very few cruise missiles and ballistic missiles used, literally only a handful of them. Already for weeks, Moscow has been delivering or has been sending mostly these Iranian-made Shahid drones, but no cruise missiles. Meanwhile, we know that cruise missile production is going on. So what does it mean? It means that Russia is stockpiling cruise missiles, probably for the sake of starting major large-scale attacks against Ukraine's energy infrastructure once the cold season arrives. This is about to happen in 1 to 2 weeks from now, maximum. So these are the things to watch. I finish here. I'll stop sharing. Thank you once again for joining us today morning. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to do my best to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, András. Very interesting as always. Do you think sort of there was worries about sort of the sustainability of supplying the Ukrainian armed forces with the weapons they need? Do you see what are the biggest problems in that direction at the moment?
The good news about weapon supplies that the weapon supplies are delivered almost exclusively on bilateral basis, meaning even if a single country out of the Rammstein group, composed of nearly 50 countries, even if a single country decides not to support Ukraine anymore, like Slovakia has been contemplating about, single country dropping out does not affect the overall picture too much, except of course if that single country would be either the United States or Germany or the UK. So all in all, the support is still largely sustained and is going to be sustained. So from this front, I'm fairly optimistic. There might be hiccups, there might be ups and downs, but what the Russians hope, namely that the West would completely stop supporting Ukraine, this is not realistic at all, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. And with that, let's turn over to Petra now, who's joining us from Brussels. Very good morning to you. We are looking forward to your briefing, to your introductory remarks.
Thanks a lot. Good morning to Berlin and also, I hope, to Ukraine and other countries. Very happy to be here with you today. I would like to probably recall a bit and react also to the previous speaker. First, on the counteroffensive, indeed, we see slow progress of Ukraine towards the good directions along the 3 axes. And I would like to stress here that that although the progress might seem slow, there is a steady progress, and we need to be patient and allow Ukraine to play its strategy to the full. So I would like to sort of refute the different reports out in the media, notably a few weeks ago, that there is no progress. There is progress, but of course we also see that Russia has mined the areas which this has also an impact on the strategy. But I agree that we see important progress, and in this sense, I would like to also reiterate that the military support of the European Union and member states will continue. But I will come back to that. On the support as such, yes, there was a lot of discussion about the different support, like it's sort of fading away and so on. But I think that this is on the long term, as you said, András, that there are probably some hiccups here and there, but the European Union is united in its unwavering support to Ukraine. And I would like to echo this, and I think this will be this will be also reiterated at the next European Council on the 26th of October. There is no other way, and you may have seen that High Representative was in Kyiv together with 27 member states, 25 at the ministerial level, and he reiterated this issue that we are unwavering in support to Ukraine, and as well we have to consider the war against Ukraine as an existential threat to EU. So I think that there is no other way than to continue supporting Ukraine. Just to recall that we have started immediately after the full-scale invasion, support Ukraine and along the 3 big strands. The first was the unwavering and unprecedented support to Ukraine at all different fronts on financial, military, humanitarian, economic and so on, which until now reached already 82.6 billion euros. This is a combination of support by the EU and the member states as Team Europe. We have also stepped up the isolation of Russia So this is the second big strand where we are helping Ukraine by curbing and hopefully destroying the military base of Russia to indeed prevent those attacks, which I agree very much with Andras. We are also expecting that Russia will step up its attacks and will use the strategy of the last year to continue important attacks on the civilian infrastructure, and we saw already last week with an attack in Kupiansk Oblast that Russia is not shy away to attack innocent civilians, and the attack last week left 52 people killed. So we will continue to isolate Russia. We have adopted 11 packages of sanctions with over 1,800 individuals and entities listed. But of course, we are working also, like we have worked on economic sanctions to prevent export and import of dual use. And as I said, to curb the military bases of Russia. We will do more. We are doing more on the circumvention of sanction and also addressing the different routes of goods which still unfortunately reach Russia and allow Russia to not only to stockpile the missiles but even to produce missiles and drones. Another important strand is accountability. We are working well on the way how to address the crime of aggression. We are progressing, but of course this is a big legal endeavor. But I hope that we will have a result soon. And the third big strand is also the outreach to third countries, where we see that Russian narrative is very present in all around the world, notably probably in Africa. If I have to single out one continent, so we are helping also Ukraine to fight the Russian narrative and making clear who is the victim, who is aggressor. We very much support the peace formula of President Zelensky, which we regard as the only peace initiative, which would lead to comprehensive and just peace. And we are also addressing the fallout of the Russia's aggression on the global, like Russia's fallout on global partners with support to food security and energy security. HRVP was in Odessa last week. He made it very clear. He saw with his own eyes what Russia is doing, bombing the silos and grain export facilities of Ukraine, basically which allow Russia to hold hostage millions of vulnerable people in the world. But we are also not stopping short of future support. Here, I would like to highlight the work on the security commitments to Ukraine. High Representative was tasked by the European Council in June to, and together with the Commission, to put forward security commitments, which were then anchored in the multilateral G7 declaration in the margins of NATO summit in Vilnius. This has been signed by EU presidents, both President Michel and President von der Leyen, and until now we have 20 member states, if I'm not mistaken, who signed this declaration. We as the EU are working now on the conceiving this important package of support, and the main aim of this support would be to help or continue helping Ukraine to defend itself, but also deter future aggressions, and also to send an important signal to Russia that we will not slow down and we will not stop our work. On the contrary, we will continue working and even enhance our cooperation. The core of these security commitments should be the proposal of High Representative to create a specific Ukraine assistance fund within the European Peace Facility, and also to develop further the EU MAM, the military training mission, which is up to train 40,000 soldiers in next months. On the financial side, and we are going to, well, you saw probably the proposal of the European Commission to secure and make the financing to Ukraine predictable through the Ukraine facility, which is now being discussed among the institutions, and this facility envisages financing through grants and loans up to 50 billion euros. It is meant to provide for recovery, to help Ukraine with the recovery and reconstruction, but also to underpin support to accession reforms and the overall European path of Ukraine. And final point, that we are also working a lot with bringing Ukraine closer to the EU single market, and we are working with them on the priority action plan, for example, which contains actions regarding roaming, trade, and other strands. So we have a very busy agenda with Ukraine, and I would like to really reiterate that from our point of view, and as we see it, there is no fading away of the support. There is an unwavering commitment of the European Union and member states to support Ukraine. And this was also very clear yesterday in Ramstein, that member states are coming in with more military equipment, notably air defense, which would also repel the attacks which we predict together with Andras on the civilian infrastructure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much indeed, Petra, for this very comprehensive overview. With an eye on the clock, let's move on to Wilfried, who has now joined us. Good morning, Wilfried, and we're looking forward to your comments.
Hello, good morning, Henning. Good morning, all of you. Thank you for invitation. I would like to begin with to put a light on the situation in the occupied regions and what it is going on there, from the point of view of the occupation forces, and what does that mean for the for the current war. So at first, I would like to remind you that we had so-called sham elections in the occupied territories in the south and in the Luhansk and Donetsk region, and what we can clearly see there is, I mean, I would not, Henning, now accentuate on the elections itself. I think it is quite clear that elections were absolutely fake, even more than last year, and that they also, it should be mentioned, took place under very concrete pressure to concrete persons in the polling stations. So we have clear attacks also on people who were concretely imprisoned and had to declare why they did not vote, for example. And that is only one thing of that. But what is for us most important is that what we see here is a full cleansing of the regional political field from local actors. So Russian Federation now puts into the region the, let me say, people of Russian origin, who already have nothing to do or had nothing to do with the region itself. We can also see that in the Luhansk and Donetsk region, although some of the officials of the so-called People's Republics remained, we see also here, let me say, an import of Russian people, and we see clearly that the collaborators from the former party of region are already not the first candidates to do the occupation policies. Of course, we have Mr. Saldo in the Kherson region, who is a product of the party of regions, but all in all, we can say almost already 50% of the candidate lists, and that were the candidates mostly who were at the first places, that are Russians with origins from Russia. Secondly, what we see is, of course, I mean, ongoing pressure on the civil population. What we see at the same time is quite, let me say, passive unrest actually of the people in the south. We have also widespread comments in Russian telecanals that the population, the population on the ground is not accepting the occupation forces. What is now important is what is being built up on that new setting of regional elites. And what we see here actually in the Azov region, so in Mariupol, Melitopol, we see a heavy improvement of Russian military infrastructure. So Russia, also based on a decrease of the Premier Minister of Russian Federation, is building up military units in the Azov region in order to reduce the distances of logistics. We know also that Russia is widely and in heavy violation of international humanitarian law, is collecting conscripts from the local population. And the second or the third very important thing is that Russia is also building a railway line from the Donbas region up to Mariupol. It's a railway line of, I think, around 120 kilometers. They started building it a few time ago with the first part of that of 60 kilometers. That means that if Russia is very exercised and very well trained in building railways, because the railway is a traditional logistic basis of Russian Federation, if Russia manages to build that railway, let me say that new perhaps support line for the troops in the south, then it can counteract against the Ukrainian tactics to thin out Russian logistics actually in Crimea and at the entry points from Crimea to the continent parts of Ukraine. And that means also for the supporters in the West that the window of opportunity for the Ukrainians is maybe not so wide. We have big problems in the south. I think that Ukrainians have a plan. They are quite, I think that we heard from Andras, quite consistently, step by step, but quite consistently working on the defense lines. But however, that is a clear threat. If Ukraine will not manage to make at least 10 to 20 kilometers in the south, and the Russians will be given time to build up these alternative logistics lines, I think that is a threat. Secondly, what we also see here and that is, I think it is important for all those people who are supportive of negotiations with Russia. We also should clearly see that in the south, actually, everything is being built up under the propaganda of Novorossiya, of New Russia. We have, for example, roads to Rostov, which are now renamed in Novo Russia accesses, as well as railway roads. Russia is actually has implemented the law for the annexation of the territories with a very unclear defining of the borders of the so-called new oblasts. And that is also one important argument that Russia, of course, will continue the southern campaign. That is, I think, very important. When it comes, I think that was your second question, Henning, when it comes to Western support for Ukraine, of course, I mean, we have now the very difficult situation on the front lines, on the one hand, and we have, of course, some, I think, upcoming very problematic tendencies when it comes to the Western support. At first, of course, that concerns the support of the US. The Congress did not give the green light for the big package of $25 billion for military support of Ukraine so far. We have also rumors to end military support, for example, in Slovakia, which maybe will reduce its support to humanitarian issues. I think we have also still a too slow, let me say, strategic support of the main supporters in the West. I mean, I do not want to repeat here the Taurus discussion, but building up on what I said before with the logistic lines, of course, these weapons are so important now for Ukraine. Therefore, it is, I think, of very importance to make clear that if Russia will manage to win time to cement its occupation in the south and actually in the Azov region, that would mean that Russia and its export-import lines in the Azov Sea, which are quite crucial for the Kyiv Convention of Sanctions, that we will get a situation for Ukraine which is a threat to its very existence, because Azov Sea and Crimea being occupied is a heavy burden for Ukraine for the next time. So that should be made very clear, that it is crucial to have progress here. What should be done beyond military support is, I think, when it comes now to a longer war, is also to strengthen the stabilization of the frontier cities, which will last long under shellings of Russian Federation, and maybe even in future, when we have a ceasefire, remain under what I call an Israel situation. So what we now should do here is we should, for example, invest in mobile shelters in the city, for example, in Kharkiv and Kherson. We should also invest in all, let me say, measures of social cohesion, consolidating the domestic resilience of Ukrainian society. For example, one very important thing is, I spoke about occupation, is the consequences of occupation, the ruining impact, the devastating impact of people who underwent occupation, and the impact of that experience for the all-day life in the communities. People who underwent that occupation, and we have first studies here, of course, demand punishment of those who tortured them, but also for collaborators, people who are widespreading propaganda of Russian world identity or something like that. And I think we should in time address these traumatic experiences, because otherwise, as the specialist of Ukraine put it, we got a society which is traumatized, which is also aggressive in all-day life. And that also is something which can very badly impact on reconstruction when it comes to the when we need that value of trust. So I think beside military support, what we can do already now, also as a precondition for future Ukraine in the time of war, is to strengthen that social cohesion, and that also includes, and that is so needed now, when it comes to many thousands of veterans which are coming from the front home. What we need is also high qualitative professional rehabilitation centers for soldiers to recreate, not only to recreate with medical support, but also when it comes to the traumas they experienced. So I think that are the challenges I would stress. And of course, what our colleague from European Union said is also quite crucial. That is the problem. And I think that is another field we have to everything invest what we have to establish for Ukraine alternative routes for its exports, for the export of agrarian products and grain. And here it is actually important to widening the capacities of the Danube corridor between Moldova, Romania, and Ukraine. That is crucial because it is not so expensive like the land routes, and the partners of Ukraine, European Union, by the way, is doing here a lot already, but the partners of Ukraine, the European member states, also should invest in the infrastructural gaps when it comes to the ports of Solina, when it comes to the canal of Solina, to the capacities of the port of Constanza. That is very crucial to, let me say, to cover maybe most of the part of the export potential of Ukraine via these routes, and that would be also contributing for the resilience and for the let me say, for the survival of Ukrainian society in the war. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wilfried. Lots very important points to it. We are past the 30 minutes line, so please keep your questions. Sort of, if you want to pose a question, please raise your hand now and get into the discussion. And while we wait for that, maybe just back to Andras, since Wilfried alluded to that, is the importance of the Sea of Azov, and you said Ukraine has sort of managed to push away the Russian Navy to some extent. So the naval corridor for exporting grain via the Black Sea is more or less is more secure than it was earlier. But maybe could you tell us a little bit about the strategic situation in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov?
Thank you. I can try. When it comes to securing the grain corridor, a key element is which enables now grain transporter ships again to reach the ports around Odessa, is that most of the ships sail actually with Western air cover. So there are usually US drones securing their way from the air. These drones are unarmed. These are reconnaissance drones. But should they spot any Russian warship, they are sending the information to Ukraine's coastal defense or air force, and then those will be the Ukrainians who are able to neutralize the threat. And in order to secure the grain corridor, it was a crucial component that a few weeks ago, Ukrainian Special Operation Forces managed to recapture a number of underwater gas drilling platforms, the so-called Boyko platforms, because these platforms were captured by the Russians already in the very beginning of the war. These platforms are not too far away from the Snake Island, so right in the middle of the western basin of the Black Sea. Russians use these platforms for deploying radars and communication and interception equipment on them. So Russia had strong radar and signal intelligence capabilities deployed to these platforms. But Ukrainian Special Operation Forces neutralized them, meaning that Russia is not completely blind when it comes to developments in the Black Sea Basin, but sees much less than it did before. So nowadays, shipping or sailing is much safer for cargo ships to Odessa and back. Right now, the biggest dangers are posed by sea mines. Sea mines that have been deployed at the beginning of the war, and there has been released British intelligence information that Russia may plan or try to deploy additional mines on the shipping routes. There have already been a few cases when ships hit mines. Fortunately, so far, no ship suffered lethal damage, but this may happen. This may come by time. So right now, sea mines are the biggest danger. This process of securing the route of cargo ships to Odessa and back, securing them from the air, this seems to function fairly well.
Thank you very much. There's one hand up by our colleague Nastya, but before we go that, just a quick question to Petra, because Wilfried explained sort of how important it is to make more export routes available, but exactly that attempt, exporting Ukrainian grain via Poland, for instance, has caused much controversy. Sort of, what is your viewing of the situation? Sort of, what do you think is the best way forward?
Yes, thanks a lot. And indeed, just to echo Wilfried, that we are working on the number of strands, also on the issues he mentioned on like social cohesion and of course demining. As regards the trade and the grain exports, following the analysis, the European Commission lifted the preventive measures, which of course caused some of the discussions and tension with members, with three, notably 3 member states. But the situation is taken care of. Ukraine is preparing on its side the systems of export licensing, and there is a bilateral discussion between Ukraine and those countries how to best approach this issue on the grain export and so on. So basically, what is now being done, and this is the exploration of the alternative routes to the Black Sea, which we understand from Ukrainian side remained one of the most important routes because of the volume which needed to be exported. A lot of attention is now on Danube, and also we are trying to see how to expand the capacity of the Danube route. With dredging and so on. So this is another, and then there are different discussions with also Baltic countries if and how we could explore the other routes through the Baltic Sea and so on. So there is a work ongoing. And I would just to echo that solidarity lanes remain the lifeline of Ukraine economy. They are the important source of revenues for Ukraine, and we are also we know that, and we are looking into the expanding them. This will probably, we will know more in a few weeks. On Danube, I know that the capacity should be expanded, or like it should be possible to for Ukraine to export 4 million tons of grain and seeds and agricultural products by end of the year. But I would leave this to our trade specialists and colleagues in Directorate MOVE who are very much taking care of. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Wilfried, you wanted to come in for 1 second maybe, and then otherwise.
Yes, I would only like, I absolutely agree with what Andras said. However, it is very important to work on the Kyiv Convention of oil sanctions by third states, which are helping export by oil tankers, by providing Russia with oil tankers or third state with oil tankers, for example, Greece, to bring oil into the third markets and then return the oil to European ports. And that should be a very important aim. And Black Sea here and the Azov Sea is crucial. If Russia continues to get or to have full control of the Azov region, it means it has a control over 50% of the potential of Kyiv Convention oil sanctions. That I only want to underline how important not only Crimea, but the Sea of Azov is, which is not so, let me say, so well known in Western media and Western populations. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Wilfried. And let's go to Nastya, please. Introduce yourself shortly. And I believe you've just come back from Kyiv. Is that right?
Anastasia Pochumbana, I'm a research fellow at the DGAP, and I also manage the Eastern Partnership think tank network. And I was just in Kyiv 2 weeks ago for a second accession forum, and mostly on discussions on the Ukraine CU integration, but also related to security and NATO. And I have a short comment and also a question to Petra, and maybe also one to Andras. So first, I think in Ukraine now there is a lot of discussion around upcoming US elections, both in relations to Ukraine's future NATO, but also in the support in relation to support that Ukraine gets from the US. And here my question goes to Petra. How do you see that the EU can step in, and how do you see the challenges upcoming with like potentially Trump elections? Because in the Ukraine there is also an understanding that US is a very big partner and when the support can decrease, that EU just won't be able to provide for this. And another discussion that we had a lot is also on the longer war. I think in Ukraine, there is the understanding that the war can continue longer and that they need to receive support as much as possible. And here I would have a question to Andras more. How do you see the main issues related to mobilization? What do you see are the upcoming challenges, and how this is going to impact the long-going war? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe Petra, do you want to respond first?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Indeed, yeah, you are right. You are right that there were a lot of discussions last week around the US, and also our ministers and HRVP have stressed that stress again the unwavering commitment. We are watching now as well the discussion about the speaker, and we hope for good results very soon. But I would like to stress that we are working hand in hand with our US partners very closely. We are always reassured by the bipartisan support to Ukraine, and we have seen also this yesterday in the Ramstein when the US announced another military package of $200 million. We are working also with the Congress and all stakeholders in the US, and we are now preparing for the next EU-US summit, and you will see that there will be a good strong declaration of unity and support. So I would say that we are confident that US will continue supporting Ukraine, and I would not like to speculate on the elections in the US because we will have to see when it comes. But also what we see with our own political class, that sometimes pre-election is different than after election. So let's hope for good. But with the US, as said, we are now united in our support to Ukraine, and we work together not only on the cooperation in military sphere, but as well on the security commitments which I mentioned. We work together on the outreach to support Ukraine's peace formula, but also we are working together on addressing the global consequences of the war. And as well, which I did not mention, is the recovery construction. US is part of the multi-donor platform, and they are contributing a lot also to work on the coordination and recovery and reconstruction itself. The final point, well, of course, as was said by Andras, yeah, there might be some hiccups, but we are really hoping that we will continue on the same path as we did, and as I mentioned, that we are working on the long-term security commitments, which include the long-term financial military support. So I hope that this work will be done by end of the year. We will have a good package in December European Council, which will reassure our Ukrainian partners that we continue as long as it takes, or as sometimes HRVP says, until Ukraine's victory. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is anyone else wanting to respond to Nastya's points? Otherwise, I would like to address Andras, yes, and maybe we'll come to Michael Sanders' question in a moment. But Andras.
Nastya had a question about mobilization and the perspectives of mobilization. The Ukrainian case, this is relatively easy. I mean, in August, the state of war, so the martial law and the general mobilization, because in Ukraine these two goes together, has been extended until mid-November. So Ukraine is still under martial law, meaning mobilization is still in place. I do not expect a definite large wave of mobilization. Instead, Ukraine may intensify the ongoing mobilization efforts on a steady, gradual basis. So no one big wave, but instead a constantly high level mobilizing men of military age. When it comes to mobilization on the Russian side, as Russia started its autumn conscription cycle, because, dear colleagues, remember, Russia still has a conscription army. Russia, in early October, Russia started the autumn conscription cycle. They are going to conscript approximately 140,000 young men for a year-long military service. This is overburdening, not overburdening, but this fulfills the capacities. This fills the capacities of Russia's recruitment and training infrastructure. The whole Russian recruitment and training infrastructure has been designed to handle roughly 140,000 conscripts at the same time. Every year, there is a spring conscription, roughly 140,000, and an autumn conscription, 140,000. Now, with the autumn conscription going on, this would make an extra mobilization technically nearly impossible, because the system is already full of conscripts. If one mobilizes 200,000 or 300,000 additional men on top of the conscripts who are already inside the system, that would result in major logistical and training problems. So Russian officials also say that there will be no new mobilization for this year. It's just not necessary. And because presidential elections are going to take place on the 17th of March next year, it is highly unlikely that the Kremlin would go for another round of mobilization just before the presidential elections, because this would be extremely unpopular. So what looks like the most probable scenario, that there will be no new Russian mobilization in the upcoming 6 months. So Russia assumes that the existing manpower it has is enough for holding the front lines and for securing the military goals. After the presidential elections, that's a different story. But for the next 6 months, a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andras. I would like to come to the question Michael Sanders or Michael Sander has sort of posted in the chat. Andras has already started to reply the same way, but I think it would be good to have this on the panel as well. Two related questions. One is sort of how big is the danger of escalation actually? Andras told us about Russian signaling of withdrawing from the nuclear test ban treaty. That sort of seems to suggest that the Russians still sort of prepared to play that card. But and then again, we haven't seen much of a reaction to whenever Western supporters of Ukraine sort of up the ante by providing stronger and more on weapons with a longer range. So how afraid are you of escalation as a panel? And related to that, is the West arming Ukraine in a way which sort of limits its abilities and sort of isn't the real idea? I'm paraphrasing here, that the two sides should come to a negotiated settlement. Wilfried is sort of nodding along, so maybe start with you, Wilfried.
Yes, I think, of course, it is very important to deliver Ukraine these high-quality weapons, which enables Ukraine from a great distance, protected by their own territory, to reach out for logistic points in Crimea. The sense of Taurus is that Ukrainian pilots can bring in that high precise weapons against crucial bridges between Crimea and Kherson Oblast, for example, in order to break the logistic routes. And what is very important for Taurus, the range is needed actually to protect Ukrainian pilots and the very little potential of Ukrainian fighter jets. So it should be clear that for Ukraine, Taurus is absolutely not interesting for targeting Russian territory. That is very important. And therefore, the Taurus is absolutely in the range what the international law allows us to do. International law, very clear, and the international communal law, very clear, allows to very support Ukraine, which is individually self-defending. And what is important here, that support and the measure and the amount of that support is also in a relationship to the character of the war of aggression. And that is not only a full-scale invasion, but it is also a permanent escalation. Please remember that Russia is not linear militarily escalating. It escalates from the first day. And let me say, the red lines of the West are still absolutely not reached out. So what the West should do, not too much discuss single types of weapons, but to strategically, of course, we should be careful. That's clear. It is absolutely clear and rational not become a conflict party. But if you look at the discussion about Taurus, in the first 8 weeks when we had the discussions, Russia even was not interested to react. They only react in time when we escalate in our societies these discussions. And the other point is that if you look at the deliveries in the past, the tanks, other heavy weapons, when the West delivered these weapons, there was no escalating response from the Russian side. Nova Kakhovka was not an answer to Leopard 2 delivery. Nova Kakhovka is an independent line of Russian escalation, which anyway will happen, and which is targeted on destructing the basis for the life of civil people. So that I think is so. So I think we should be careful, yes, but please, what we are sending, including Taurus, including Storm Shadows, is far under the red lines. What is allowed by international law, and that should be in the center of the discussion before the international community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wanting to address?
And when it comes to the danger of a potential Russian escalation, well, it's already coming. When it comes to the upcoming attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, I mean, widening the scope of attacks to dedicated civilian targets, that already counts as an escalation. And just to strengthen what Wilfried said, Russia is not going to attack, again, Ukrainian civilian infrastructure because it would be a response to any kind of a new Western delivery. Instead, Russia is going to attack Ukraine's energy infrastructure because this is what they see as fit for winning the war. So the Russian escalation, to formalize a bit, Russian escalatory steps are not dependent on Western military deliveries. They have nothing to do with them. Instead, they are dependent on the actual situation of the front line or on how the Russian military command perceives the developments of the war. So if Russia wants to escalate, they will escalate regardless of what we are doing. So because they address it from their own military perspectives. So the fear of a Russian escalation shall not hamper the West from supplying Ukraine with newer weapons, particularly as long as Ukraine sticks to the line of not attacking Russia proper with Western-made weapons. And Ukrainians have been so far fairly obedient with that. I mean, the strikes against Russia proper have been conducted exclusively with Ukrainian weapons, drones, missiles, all that. While the Crimea, of course, is Ukrainian territory. So just as Wilfried said, it's a legitimate target for Ukraine to strike in order to restore its territorial integrity. All in all, I think, yes, Western weapons deliveries should be continued, and we must not be deterred by Russian escalation threats.
Thank you very much. We've got only 1 minute left, so I would ask sort of to wrap up to ask each of you the same question. How worried are you about the possibility of support for Ukraine waning over the long term? Are you somewhat worried, or maybe not worried at all? Let's start again with Andras and then go to Petra and so Wilfried to us.
In the short and medium run, I'm not worried. When it comes to the longer run, I don't see the longer run. How do we define longer run? But in the short and medium run, we're good.
Thank you very much. Petra.
Yeah, I would just reiterate that there is no, this is an existential threat to EU. So I believe that I'm not worried that we would, definitely in short midterm, if it's like long term, I don't know how we could define long term. Maybe there might be some discussions, but I'm not worried at all.
Thank you very much. And Wilfried.
I will join my colleagues, and I'm also not worried about the short-term support. But please, what is middle-term support? I mean, for me, the problems will begin already next year. Certain types of weapons Ukraine will run out of, and everything depends if the Western partners are ready to heavily invest to upscale industrial production lines for key types of weapons. If that won't happen, it is clear what David French said in New York Times, what we have now. Ukraine, of course, shortens the distance to the Goliath, but Ukraine remains David. And if David will not get what I said before next year, Goliath will make it. That is a problem we have.
Thank you very much. And I still sort of read this as a sort of overall optimistic take that Europe in particular will not weaken its support to Ukraine as far as we can see. And with that message, I wish you all, well, I want to ask you to join me in thanking our three panelists. It was really an excellent discussion. And thank you very much for your insights. And with that, I wish you all a very good morning. See you soon again at the German Council on Foreign Relations. Good morning.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.